All right. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? I'm good.
Good, good.
How's
Just
things over there? Everything okay?
yeah, just wrapping up my work day and
I'm
trying
just
to
getting started on mine. It's still, I never understand what's going on with time zones. It's
I
like,
know, right?
I've been doing it for, I don't know, like 12, 13 years. I've been dealing with multiple time zones, and I swear I'll never get used to it. Just like
Yeah.
people are online and they either answer me or they don't, and they'll get back to me when they do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I kind of like, I've embraced the asynchronous working to an extreme extent, I guess.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
like the previous company I did a lot of remote work for. They're based in most people are in the US, but there's some in Europe, and I would occasionally come over to Japan for like a month or two. And I swear one of the I'd always try and give them a heads up that like, oh, I'm going to be on a different time zone. But I swear one of the times people are messaging me, and I'm like, oh, I'll get back to you in the morning. And they're like, hold on, where the hell are you? I'm like, I'm in Japan. And they're like, okay, I was not aware of this. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can just that's the beauty of remote and asynchronous flexible working, right?
Yep, it can be a pain, but
Oh,
yeah.
I noticed a new feature, or I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it says recording audio only.
Yes. New thing that I added, a new label that lets you know whether you're recording just audio or audio and video because video recording is optional.
Gotcha. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
you
And it's
know, so
also both storage and storage heavy, and I guess bandwidth heavy as well if you're recording everything.
exactly. That's one of the reasons why I introduced that switch so that video recording can be optional. That way, if you don't really need to capture video, then why? Why use up resources and
Right. Well, it's
make
like, again, this
oh,
kind of comes back to our discussion last time about storage costs, right?
yep.
Video isn't cheap.
Yeah, and not to mention, just putting more burden on the whole process,
Well, yeah, because
capturing.
you got to upload it, and you've got to capture it, upload it, and process it, right? So
Yeah, do
it's
all that stuff. And if you don't need it, then why
yeah,
bother? A lot of podcasters don't are not interested in video. They just want to record audio. So
I think from
yeah.
what I've, this is, I guess, somewhat anecdotal, both from what I've seen, and I had a discussion last week with somebody about doing some like podcast stuff, and I think there's this idea, especially around like corporate podcasts or like ones that are more, I don't want to say professional, but done by businesses instead of by people. I
Mhm.
think this idea of being able to repurpose, stuff as like YouTube clips, or like as a tweet with some video or things like that. I think that seems stronger in that for those kind of creators. Whereas I guess just straightforward podcasters are like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And plus,
Yeah.
it's nice. It makes the recording process easier when you can see each other, just because it's easier to communicate when you can see somebody. But yeah, for the actual end result, yeah, don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I'll share my update since we're talking about this stuff. So this week I'm supposed to be doing some marketing related stuff, but I haven't because I've been trying to squash some bugs that have come up. Some people using the product have reported some issues. A couple of them were kind of major because it kept them from using the product.
Kind of major.
Yeah, so I kind of got concerned about that because I hadn't seen that before. And luckily, one of them, at least, it turned out to be an easy fix. And it had to do with cameras capturing really high resolution, like, 4K or,
Oh, right, yeah.
which generates a lot of data, just an incredible amount of data. And I've found that FusionCast wasn't handling that much data properly. So it was breaking, basically after a few minutes. Well, the first person who reported it, it was breaking after a few seconds
Right.
into recording and it was not working
Again,
at all.
that's I guess that's something. Yeah, you got to consider is like for casual podcasters like us. Yeah, you're just using the in computer like webcam, right, which is
Yeah.
like probably low bandwidth, kind of. It's obviously crappy quality. But yeah,
Yeah.
if they're semi pro, or they know what they're doing, they're likely to have a big 4K SLR sat behind their computer, right?
Yeah, some people have a pretty
Hmm.
advanced setup and that's why I guess it hadn't come up before because most people are using just regular cameras
Yeah.
and not super advanced stuff like that. But yeah, I was able to fix that. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it took a couple of days of debugging and
Can you basically ask for a smaller version of the video? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so basically I would like to allow or provide for capturing 4K video, but at this point it's not, it's beyond the scope of what FusionCast can
Seriously.
do.
Yeah.
So
I mean, rein in your scope at first, at least, anyway, right?
yeah. So technically it could handle it, but the problem is you really need, first of all, you can, I guess you can add let's say you add an external 4K camera
Mm,
to your computer. So just because the camera is 4K doesn't necessarily mean your computer can handle it, right?
right.
Because if you don't have a powerful enough computer with a really good network connection, then it'll lag and it'll become a bottleneck and it becomes a problem for FusionCast to
And things get out of
continuously,
sync and stuff as well. Like,
things get out of sync. And so technically it could handle it given that it's a good enough computer with a good enough network connection, but I don't have control over that, so it's really hard to handle, at least for me, solo
you
developer
know,
working
again,
on this.
way out of scope for this level.
Yeah, exactly. It's way out of scope because everyone has different kinds of setups, and even for myself, I have a 4K camera, but it's an external camera. My laptop is kind of old now, so it kind of handles it, but for uploading and, continuously uploading the stream with my Wi-Fi connection, which is not the greatest in this part of the house, it has some issues. So what I'm doing is I'm dropping the resolution. Even if it's a 4K camera, it'll drop it to full HD,
Okay,
which
still,
is,
that's still
it's
good.
still really good
Yeah,
quality, but it's
it's
able to
manageable.
handle it. Yeah, it's more
I mean, it's a
manageable.
fraction of the data bandwidth, right?
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of data that 4K generates.
It,
It's a huge jump from
it really
full
is.
HD to
I mean,
4K.
I guess maybe to do with my age as well, but I really find it difficult to see the difference.
Right? It's very unnoticeable,
It
really.
really is. I mean, again, unless I'm, pixel peeping and I'm right up to it, I really find it difficult to see the difference. I
Yeah,
mean, there's certain
same
content which
here.
you might kind of go, oh, that looks sharp, but for general stuff, I mean, really, no.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And the other thing is a lot of places that you upload these videos that you may
They're
capture
gonna
with
compress the hell
4K,
out of
they're
them
gonna
anyway, right?
compress. Yeah, they're gonna compress it anyway. So especially when we're talking about the web,
Yeah,
it's
YouTube is
gonna get
particularly bad.
compressed.
Right? Anything you
Yeah,
stick in YouTube is like, yeah, that's it's got better, but it's still not great.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
still remember the YouTube, postage stamp kind of like tiny first flash clips.
The
So
little videos.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's come on a little bit since then.
Yeah. So that's the way I'm handling it, dropping the resolution to full HD. Basically the way it handles any video now is it attempts to set it at full HD, and if the camera can handle it, then it'll do that. And if it doesn't, then it'll drop it to the next best available resolution
Oh,
that
gotcha.
the current camera can handle. But then another issue that was reported had to do with interruption of recording, like sudden interruption of recording. Like, for example, someone changing their Wi Fi connection in the middle of recording
Right.
or the connection just dropping, for whatever reason. Someone reported having an issue with that where they couldn't get back to recording after something like that happened, where the network of the guest dropped.
Hmm.
So that one has become a little more challenging to fix just because dealing with sudden interruption of recording is a big deal in the FusionCast
The whole
environment and
system, right? Yeah, I
the
mean, it
the whole
relies on
system.
data being there to upload and getting acknowledgements and everything, and then suddenly everything stops. It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And if you keep in mind that it's continuously uploading and buffering data and dealing with a lot of moving parts, so all of a sudden stopping like that where the network is gone, it's like a freight train that's full speed ahead, and all of a sudden it just
Yeah.
has to come to a stop.
Yeah.
And what do you do with all that energy that's being pushed,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden it doesn't have anywhere to go,
No.
right? All this data is flowing, it's going, and it's a lot
Yep.
of moving parts are happening, and then all of a sudden bam,
Yeah.
no network.
Yeah. That's
So
it's. I mean, it basically just kills everything, right? Yeah.
yeah,
there's nowhere
Yeah.
for you to go with that, really.
Yeah, exactly. But now, if you think about, let's say there's a session going on where there's 2 or 3 people participating, and one of them has a problem and their network breaks, they're out of the session, they're out of the picture at that point, but everybody else can continue recording.
Ooh, that's
Everybody
true.
else is still in the session. So
Yeah.
FusionCat has to handle that scenario where things have to continue for the ones that can, but the
Hmm.
one that was dropped, it has to deal with that as well and
That's a
bring
very good
them
point.
bring them back into the session in a graceful way. And what I found is that FusionCast wasn't handling that gracefully before. Right now, I'm in the middle of improving that. But basically, there was not much guidance. It was just, it dropped. So the user had to figure out what to do, how to come back and rejoin the session. And even if they were able to do that, I guess there were some issues where getting them back into the session where everybody else is already, they're still recording, right? So they
Right,
have to
right.
come back in and pick that up
Wow,
and automatically start recording. So
that sounds tricky.
yeah, it's kind of tricky. So I'm doing some work to improve that and how that whole thing is handled more gracefully.
You think you can
Um,
manage the coming back into? Cause it's the coming rejoining that sounds like the nightmare bit in there. I mean, dropping one of the streams and truncating that file seems doable, but
yeah.
trying to pick up an extra stream where that sounds not easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
It's
is
a
that enough to not deal with that? Is that something that you think you could just like?
So thankfully, because I had this auto recording feature already kind of in place, like the auto recording
Of
when you
course, right.
join, I kind of tapped into that functionality to, help get that participant back into the session and start recording automatically. But before that can happen, it seemed like I needed to add a little more guidance. A screen that comes up when they lose connection to the network lets them know, rather than saying that the network connection is gone just by showing an alert. I basically take them to a completely different screen that just deals with that instead
Right.
of keeping them in the studio, because at that point it's pointless to stay in the studio because they're not
You're
there
not recording.
really.
Yeah, you're not part of that session at all,
E-
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I take them to a different screen completely that guides them and tells them what's going on. And it waits for the network connection to be reestablished.
Hmm.
And once it's reestablished, then they can see, okay, it's back. And now I have this button to request to join again, right?
Right.
So there's a little more visual cues of
Gotcha.
what's going on
Yep.
and more guidance. And when they click on that button, then they're taken back into the waiting room and back to the first step
Right. Right.
as
Right.
as
So
they
does
usually
that
do to join the session.
their recording effectively you end up with just an extra recording which happens to
Exactly.
start not at the beginning but like wherever they rejoin, so it's up to the
Exactly.
editor to deal with that, not your problem. Right. But at least
Exactly.
it lets you recover in some graceful as graceful as possible way, right?
Yes,
Okay, that's
exactly.
nice.
Yeah.
If you
So
can pull that off, that's nice.
yeah. Yeah. So
I have confidence in you. Don't worry. No, because especially like I'm just thinking of the scenarios that would be useful in, and especially if there's 3 of you doing some kind of recording, you can deal with one person falling off and then them rejoining, and you might be able to, as if you're interviewing someone else, you might be able to pull that
yeah.
off better than everybody just getting kicked out or something, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
if you can pull it off in that way, then that'd be nice.
Yeah, and that's the way it's shaping up to be. I'm still working on that stuff, but it's looking good. But there's still some loose ends that I still need to tie down. And in the process of working on that, I discovered a few little tangentially related bugs, little things that weren't working the way they were supposed to. And so I'm cleaning that up as well as I
Nice.
go.
So how's you say these were reported by users as well? So have you added any more to it, or is this still your current user?
I added, I think, a couple of people since we last spoke. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do marketing stuff
Get
that
on the
I was
marketing.
supposed to do this
Yeah,
week,
yeah.
but yeah, that's the way it goes. This,
Sadly, it
this,
is. Yeah.
yeah, this is higher priority at this point because I don't want issues where the user is not able to use the product. That's
Right.
really bad.
Yeah.
So,
That's. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give you a hard time about. I feel like I should. I feel like it's my responsibility to say no. That's a post launch fix, but I also know the frustration when you can see that. I mean, so I had, a few of these with Dotplan that, like, I'm like, I can't release with this unless, I know there's a bug under these circumstances, or I know this doesn't deal with this condition, and then literally nobody has come up against this at all. And yeah, but I fixed it. But I know I probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I could have left it. And so I know the feeling of being compelled to, like, prioritize this, so I can't really give you a hard time, even though I feel I should. Because I do the same thing. So I mean, I'm so yeah. So what's been happening with Dotplan? So the big thing here is, so that the customer which I effectively signed up with, like this Japanese customer, so they've got a kind of, it's not even a, is it a soft deadline? So I've agreed to add a feature for them, and it's one of those things that I knew I should have done when I built it, but I actually did convince myself that I'm not going to need that. That's not important. Well, it turns out it is.
Huh. Okay.
And that's so because we've added this time card thing in, like check-ins, checkouts, and that
Right.
on my current plan, especially with regards to selling to Japanese. So I can't remember if we talked about this, but I've spoken to a few kind of mentors and people locally in Japan about selling it in Japan. So the big pushback, or the big feedback, which all of these, both VCs and mentors has given me, is that, like, it's not impossible, but don't try selling to bigger customers now. It's just really not worth your time going there. If things work
Mhm.
out, then they'll know about you anyway, but really just
Mhm.
don't bother. They're going to give you so much hassle and requests, and there's this definite,
Compliance and all kinds of
yeah.
stuff.
So one of the more the things I see a lot with regards to bigger customers, and I saw this quite a lot at the startup that I was at here previously, is that Japanese bigger customers don't see that there's a lot of partnerships happen here, like, a bigger customer with, like, enterprisey type customer with a lot of smaller customers that they sell to. They sell all those existing products and they want to add you as one of their products. So they offer this, oh, we do a partnership, there's some kind of, revenue share, and, we'll basically sell your application as, along with ours. And it sounds great, but there seems to be this, and again, speaking to other companies, this seems to happen a lot, is that means they think they own your roadmap.
Yeah.
And it doesn't become your product, it becomes what they decide your product is going to be. And I don't know how common this partnership thing is outside of Japan. It just seems incredibly common here for smaller startups in general. They seem to have this, this path to market of becoming, or getting a partner that's a bigger company that can effectively resell for you. But that means you effectively become beholden to every single urgent request, and they're,
Yeah, and multiply that times however many of those type of customers you have, and each one is pulling
yep,
you in a different direction because they would think the product should do this, and
yes,
the other one thinks the product should do that.
right. Completely irrespective of what your product is, they just have come up with an idea of what it should be, and they'll sell
Mhm.
that and then tell you that, well, it's got to do this by next week because we've sold this, and it's not even, within
Yeah,
your company, or you don't even know who it's being sold to. So
yeah,
it's less than optimal. So the big feedback is sell to startups. I mean, there's this huge push. I can't remember if I mentioned this last time. There's a huge push here in Japan for the government trying to encourage graduates or younger
hmm
people to start their own companies, because Japan is way behind in this regard as far as younger people being entrepreneurial and starting software companies. So the big feedback here is, like, sell to them, that you understand them. I kind of are on the same wavelength anyway. They have got no problem with putting in a credit card and paying, $50 for something. Whereas, again, trying to get a big company to pay anything is like, well, there's a process and there's a department that will.
yeah, yeah,
So the big thing is
yeah.
just sell to small startups, and again, that you understand what they're trying to do, you understand their problems, you can communicate with them, they're more likely to understand English as well, because again, university students, graduates who are starting a company, they'll be more exposed and be better at English anyway, whereas a bigger company is like less likely to have some English knowledge, which just helps me communicate outside of the Japanese route, which I'm also taking. So along those lines is like, okay, the big thing here is that for compliance reasons, you have to keep time cards, right?
Right.
For everybody, unless you're a director level, or I think there's a limit of 10 million yen a year, which is like $100K. If you're below that, you have to keep time cards of when you start work, when you stop work. Supposedly, to the reason being is to stop overwork. That it's debatable whether it works, but that's the theory behind it anyway.
That's the reasoning behind it.
Yes, I mean, overwork is a massive problem here, and there's been a number of deaths through people doing 100-hour weeks and things for months at a time. And so like trying to keep companies in check is a big. So even if a company doesn't, they should be doing, and they probably know that they should be doing. So if we can make that easy and part of their normal communication, then it's a win. So that's one of the core messages that I'm going to try to communicate with the sales process for selling to Japanese companies is like simply, a very simple way of keeping track of your working hours, for compliance reasons, as well as the core idea of, being, communication and empathy and being able to share your day as well. So try to mix those two together, give them there's a good reason why you should be doing it for, logistical and compliance reasons, and then there's the added benefit of this as well. So we added time cards, and the easiest thing to do when viewing time cards is show them by month, right? Because all I have to do is show them current month, and you go forwards and back, you can select a month. Well, that's not, of course, not how companies work, is it? Japanese companies tend to pay around the 20th to the 25th. 25th, 26th is the start of the next month. All your bills tend to go out on the 25th or 26th. It's generally around there. So people get paid between the 20th and 25th, depending on the company. And that's when they expect time cards to be recorded from. So your payslip is calculated on from around the 20th to the 19th-ish. So of course they're like, yeah, well, we need it from the 20th to the 19th every month. And it's like, of course you do. So again, they're like, it's fine. We're just doing this with Excel. We just open the previous month and we cut and we paste, and yeah, it's fine. We can do it. And I'm like, I can't let you just do that. Every time you do it, it's like a grain of sand in your shoe, right? It's every single time they do this, they're going to be like, oh, bloody dot plan, right? And so it's like, this is a reasonably easy thing for me to change, to improve upon. And it just, it gives that, well, I'm listening to the needs of the customers, and it's bugging me that they have to work around this every single month, right? So I'm like, okay, I've got to do this. I've just got to have a time, date range for viewing time cards, and it's one of those, just add a date range, right? It's amazing how many small niggly things that come up with this, right? So the obvious one is, okay, so I just added 2 date picker things. Again, date pickers are stupidly a pain in the bum. That they're not like, how is this not completely and utterly solved on a web browser now? There's a pretty decent one. It's like vanilla date picker or something like this, and it does the job. And there's a version that does Tailwind, that's in Tailwind, but it's not quite right, and it kind of forces other preset formatting on it. So it's like way too long trying to fiddle around with that, and it's like, I just want a date and a date range picker, and it's fine. So it's kind of got that looking more or less as I want it to, which is way more work than it should be. So then you go, okay, well, you've picked a date range. So what happens if they press the previous month? Well, under normal circumstances, that makes sense, right? Because if you've gone the 20th to the 19th, press previous, you still want to see the 20th to the 19th, but of the previous date range, right? But when someone is looking at the current month, say they show from the 1st of February to the 28th of February, what happens when they press previous month then? Well, you want to see from the 1st of January to the 31st 1st. Is it 31 days in January? I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, you want to see the month, right? Not until the 28th of January.
Right.
So how do I know that they wanted to look at a month instead of a date range then? It's like, oh, that's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Huh.
and then what happens if they select, the 1st of January 2020 and they're looking at the, 31st of February 2022? I don't want to show them 2 years worth of data. So then I've got to add pagination. I
Mhm.
didn't have pagination on that. Or do I just restrict the date range to maximum of 3? And there's all these like
Yeah.
stupid little cases when I'm like, viewing a month was easy. I'll just add a date range, right? No such
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Oh man, dealing with dates is always a pain.
Well,
It's just a
the other fun thing as well is time zone, very dependent on time zones, right? Because you're doing
yeah.
check-ins, you're doing clock in, clock out, work start, work stop, work stop, work stop. And of course, they're doing it here in Japan. Of course, I store everything in UTC because that's necessary, which means you select a date range. Well, you're in Japan has selected a date range, which means this time date range in UTC, right? Which means everything has to be converted through time zones for
Mhm.
literally every single query, and keeping track of that is it's an effort.
Yeah.
So that's been my week. Again, it's
Uh,
such a trivial little thing. So the one of the fixes I'm going to try and do to make this less flaky or less susceptible to user input problems is to add an option for an organization to say, when does your month start?
okay.
So rather than the date range will be there and it will kind of work, but there's going to be places where it's not going to be optimal because I'm not taking care of necessarily every single edge case of all these.
Mhm.
But I still want to provide them the option of being able to say, show me, from the, show me last week.
Mhm.
But given that this company always starts on the 20th of the month, let them set a start date for their month and
Mhm.
default to that. That means the back and the forward will work because it will set to the 20th to the 19th. Going back will show them the previous 20th and 19th, and it's
Mhm.
unlikely that they're really going to use the range selector that often. That's going to be a niche case rather than the standard case. If every time
Mhm.
they went to the page they have to select last month and then this month, this date, the chance of error is high, right? Because they'll get the
Right.
wrong month. I mean, I do it, right? You select start date and I've got to go back a month. And then you click it again and you just get the wrong month. You've
Yeah.
always got to be kind of on top of making sure that you're entering the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I can default to what they expect, then I'll get it right 95% of the time, right? And then if
Right.
they do need a specific date range, let's say, yes, they do need from, September the 1st until, August the 19th, other way around,
Mhm. Mhm.
then they can still do that. But that's only going to be, a niche request. And so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's
Wow.
just add date ranges. It can't be difficult, right? Yeah. I mean, I open like, oh, this is a nice can of worms. What's in here?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, it kind
yeah.
of exploded all over my desk.
Dealing with dates is such a pain, and time zones, man.
Nice combo there.
I don't envy you at all.
So that's yeah. I say I'm 80% of the way through this, so I'm kind of like
Okay.
I've got it all working. I just need to make it not as brittle now and just add some validation stuff to some guards to make sure they can't go crazy and do stupid stuff with it. So that's yeah. I've broken its back. It's just got to get this done, and so yeah, that's been my week. All good fun.
Wow. Yeah, the fun never ends, right?
Yeah, and so doing this as well, I'll just get Phoenix up to date as well. Which, to be honest, Phoenix is. I think this is an offshoot of Elixir being, and Phoenix for this matter, being very unmagic. I mean, there's what it provides you feels like magic as an end user, just like I wrote this code and it makes me do all this live edits to my page, and it's
Mhm.
fantastic, but it's very explicit about what you're doing.
Okay.
Rails has this, I think, somewhat justified like myth of it being magical, and oh look, it's all there's all this stuff happening under the surface, and you get like this abstract way of doing it. Once you know Rails quite well, you don't feel like that. It's just it's quite a common meme, right? That
Right.
Rails is magic. Phoenix never feels like this. It's everything you do is very. It feels a lot like Rails, and when you first create a project and you start like working on it, it's like, oh, I know this. There's models here. There's views there. It all kind of feels very familiar, but everything is much more explicit. There's you never hit a point where you're like, I don't know where that's getting set. It's like, no, there's this pipeline, or there's all these plugs, and it goes through here, that does that, and then it does that. It's like a
Yeah.
very easily followable path to where you are right now. And that makes it, when you do an update, the updates tend to be, well, this has changed in this part of the path, so therefore I just need to change this. It never feels like, and now nothing works. It never feels like that. It feels like a very straightforward upgrade path, and they've been, their documentation is fantastic. So I was kind of dreading it, and then I spent a few evenings doing it, and I'm on the latest Phoenix, so I'm glad I did that. I was less successful with the JavaScript dependencies updating, but we'll not talk about it.
Oh man. So you've been busy with
Yes. So
at
yeah,
at the
all
low
my best
level.
intentions of doing some landing page complete redesigns and everything have also been like put on the shelf for another week or two, just because it's like, okay, this customer, again, they're kind of getting preferential treatment just because of how much they've helped me with they were the most vocally helpful through the beta process. Just like,
Nice.
they're really relying on it, and they've just been really helpful with all of their feedback. I've gone into their office a number of times, and they just sat with us and like, this is what we need it to do, and this is where we're feeling that it's not right. So they've just been so helpful that, yeah, of course they're getting
Nice.
preferential treatment, but
Yeah.
so they're kind of going live with the whole company using this in very soon. So it's like, okay, let's get these things sorted for them, so they go into it with a good feeling, right?
Yeah. Nice.
It's super important to keep these early customers close, right? Just because they've been so good, and I'm treating them as I'd like to be treated.
Yeah, exactly. They're giving you a vote of trust and confidence, even though they know the product is in its early stages, and
Right, exactly.
and they're patient with any issues that come up, and that's invaluable. That's amazing to have that kind of support and product and customers that are willing to give you a chance, at this early stage. That's
Completely.
always, I'm so grateful for that too. I have a couple of users who have been very supportive and very vocal about it and recommending it and to other people, and even though it has its issues and it's not quite there yet, but really grateful for that.
I mean, I think this comes back to, we talked about this before, about trying to be an authentic creator. You're not a faceless corporation. It's you, and you're doing your best, and you want to make the right thing for people, right? So it's it's my default feeling for, especially when you come across quite an obviously well-financed startup that's trying to do something, versus an indie maker or something that you're aware of the person or the handful of people that built it. Your tolerance and the amount just how you feel about it in general is so different, right? You're much more willing to give feedback. You're much more willing to just give things a chance, and not overlook, but be supportive of it, rather than just be like, well, this sucks, which is very easy to do for something that you think is just like a well-funded team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you feel like there's no excuse, right? At that point,
exactly.
You feel like, well, I mean, how many engineers do they have working there, and this is what they do?
Seriously, yes.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very common thought process. It's like, it cost you, and you can't. Okay. Speaking of interesting little products, so this is something that I found this week. It's an app called Tango. So one of the requests which I have had, again, from Japanese customers more so than non-Japanese, is a manual. I know this seems great, but basically it's some kind of a help system. So I started off a knowledge-based thing, which I'm using. What's it called? Eager? Is it? Yeah, I can't remember. But and that's quite nice for putting together a knowledge-based thing. But for that also, it's a pain to write these things, right? Because it's really difficult to say, and then click on this, go and take a screenshot and and then
Yeah.
and then do this and fill in this here, and it's just a very boring process to make any form of help documentation, right? I think you
Yeah.
probably feel
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, totally. It's not fun at all.
It's not
But
fun at all.
I'm
So,
thinking
so
maybe
go on.
no, I was gonna say maybe video is like
Right.
we talk. I know we've talked about that before, where maybe video is a better way to go about
Yes.
it.
Right. So that
But
that
yeah.
was my feeling too. But of course, then I've got okay, Japanese customers. I have to then record Japanese videos, which they,
Mm,
is they might be like, okay, this guy really needs to sort his Japanese out, or I get to pay somebody to record it for me. But so this is an interesting one. Tango, what it lets you do is it's a Chrome extension thing. You activate it, you say record a new flow or something. I think it calls it flow, I can't workflow or something. You then
mhm.
do the action in
Okay.
your browser, and then you click finish. It takes screenshots of that part of the screen with the thing highlighted that you clicked, and it will auto fill it in using like alt tags and tag and button names and things like that. So, for instance, creating a new user, adding a new user to your system. You
Mhm.
go to settings, workspace settings, members, click add user, type in their email address, click send, and that's it. But that would take me. It's just I really don't want to do that. It's like
Yeah.
it's such a painfully process to go through. So this you hit record, you effectively go and do those things. It gives you a series of screenshots and text. Click on this, click on that, click on the other. The buttons are highlighted on your screenshots, and you can just export it, or you can link to it on that platform. And it's like, okay, I could rattle through this in half an hour, produce like 20 how-to guides for things like, making someone an admin, or like editing your time card, things like that, which are like, it's obvious you just click on this button, but still it's obvious to me. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily obvious to an end user. So I'm going to give this a go and just try and make using this, just because it's, again, it comes up every single time with Japanese customers. They're like, need a manual, or at least a help system of some kind that is, I don't know, it's really difficult to talk myself into doing it. Even though I know what I need to do, and I know that I need to, it's less
Yeah.
easy to
Yeah.
actually convince myself to start on it. So hopefully
Yeah.
this will again, it'll get me 70% to 80% of the way there. So it's like, okay, well, it's kind of done now. Just need to finish it off. So I'm gonna try
Yeah. It
that.
sounds like it's a pretty useful tool, and it'll be helpful.
I will report in how it goes.
All right. Is it a paid service
They
or?
do, there is, but there's also quite a good freebie. I'm trying to
Okay.
remember. Tango.us, I think it is. Tango.us.
Go.us.
Yeah, create step-by-step documentation with screenshots in seconds. There we go. So yeah, unlimited workflows. It's got logos on it, and it's got watermarks on the things. If you pay $12 a month, you can blur sensitive information, things like that. You can do with more people. So freebies looks good enough for me to start off with, and then I'm all for the freebie accounts.
Nice. Yeah.
Although, speaking of which, I just got Mixpanel telling me that my free account is now going to be $300. I was like, cancel. They have like, it's one of these, what seems to be common in big Silicon Valley, well-funded startup type things. It's like, we're giving you $50,000 worth of credits. And you're like, of course it expires in a year, right? And you've used $300 worth of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like,
are you gonna go for it, or are you gonna cancel it?
Cancelled. I immediately canceled.
$300 a month. Wow.
No, a year.
A month?
I think
A year?
it was a year. Yeah, I think it was a year
year?
for the
Oh, wow.
lowest plan. I'm like,
Still,
no,
it's quite a bit.
I mean, it's interesting. I think there's a free. I think it goes down to a free plan, which is well within my budget of clicks. Or if not, then I'll just remove some clicks. And to be honest, it's interesting from an analytics. I'm not. It just it gives me a general idea of how people are using it and what times, and so I know when to break it.
Yeah. Hopefully you didn't have a lot of integration code in your
No,
app.
I mean, the nice thing about it is it's literally like just dropping a bunch of like track. So in your Elixir code you can just put like a mixpanel.track event, and it'll just does it.
It does
So
it. Okay.
yeah, it's just like find comment.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking at their website here, Tango.
No, Tango, say I'm going to give it a go and see how it works out. But I did just a test with like 2 things, which took 30 seconds each to do, and it got
Hmm.
me much further than I have got on any other help documentation so far. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. I've just got to make a list of things that I need to do, and then do that,
Nice. Nice find.
and then
Cool.
I'll get to the landing page. No, really need to do that.
Cool. Nice looking website too.
It's interesting. Yeah, it
Nice and
looks quite
clean.
nice.
Really good looking site.
Hmm.
Very cool. Just gonna bookmark it in my tools here.
What's the other main
Um,
tools because you're using what's the landing page?
yeah, I'm using
Statamic?
Statamic for
Statamic, that's it, yeah.
Statamic, yeah,
Yeah.
for the marketing site. Yeah, I'm using that with Tailwind, and yeah, still, I love Statamic. It's super flexible, but still, it's a tool for developers, really.
Right.
So it requires that you wire everything up together, and some level of maintenance is required. Keeping it up to date, and if you want to do any custom stuff, you have to go into the back and code some
Right.
stuff here and there. Mostly it's markup and templating language
What's the
type of stuff.
immediate for something like a landing page? It's a static site generator, right? So if you've got like a blog, it'd be great because it could just generate all of your pages and stuff. But as
It
far as
can
like
you
a landing page, what do you get from just like writing HTML? So say I
like
just made an HTML
mhm,
page with Tailwind and hosted it on Netlify or something. Is there
mhm,
what does it give me over that? I assume it's for if you're building like a series of pages and stuff, right?
mhm. Yeah, with Statamic, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean you can build. That's the thing. It's really flexible. So you can build anything from like a single page site to like a full-blown super complex website. And also you can use it as a static site generator, or you could use it as a kind of like a dynamic website, but it uses static files.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why it's called Statamic,
Right, right,
because
right.
it can do kind of like both. It's kind of like both worlds,
Gotcha.
static sites, but it can be dynamic in the way that it behaves. Or you can export all your pages as static files, which is what I'm doing. But yeah, you can build anything really with it. But there's still a little bit of complexity in terms of, it's not just like one of these services where you can just go online, log in, and make your changes and you're done, right? You still have to, because you make your changes and push your code up to the repo and then
Mm.
do deployment and that kind of stuff. There's still a little bit of a few steps involved in maintaining your site and
Yeah, because
keeping
I'm
it up to
using
date.
umso.com for
Oh yeah, you
landing
mentioned that the
pages.
other day.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's again I don't have to do anything, so it's kind of
Yeah,
nice. It's
exactly.
literally a like select your blocks kind of
Yeah.
fill in your text, and so I know if I went for a custom page, which again it would be nice to do, but I know I'd spend a million times more fiddling with the layout than actually the content. So using this
Yeah.
is kind of forcing me to like just focus on what you're actually putting on the page, not how it how it's laid
Yeah.
out, in code,
Yeah.
not necessarily the content, right? So
Yeah, and that's something I miss. Just being able to just drag and drop and
yeah,
and just something simple. At this stage, is probably ideal to have a setup like what you have with UMSO, because you don't have, like you said,
I
you don't
mean,
have to
to
worry
be honest, I
about
think
the
this is
little details.
the thing which costs me the most in all of the tools I use, and that's like $30 a month.
Mm, yeah,
So, but at the same time, the thought of actually going to something that I have to do myself is just like I'll pay the $30. Just it's crazy that the thing I pay the most for is hosting a static page.
yeah,
It's like I've
yeah,
got all these like servers running, all database and things. It's like yeah, I'm on the freebies of those, but
yeah.
keeping a landing page, static landing page up, it's like well, I'll pay for that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Well,
my
I mean, you're
priorities may be weird.
well, you're paying for the convenience, and you
I
don't
really
have
am.
to.
Yes. Yeah.
It saves you a lot of time, I'm sure, because you
Exactly.
don't have to
Yeah.
waste time fiddling with all your custom built template and all the custom stuff. And it's just trying to figure out, coming up with a design and all that. It takes forever.
Well,
So
again, yeah, it's kind of I
yeah,
know I'd spend more time thinking about that than again the content if I went to custom route. So
yeah,
this is kind
yeah,
of forcing me down a particular, course of action. It's like, no, you've got to think of the content because the design is out of your hands. So
Yeah.
maybe that's good.
Yeah, that's why I kind of settled for a really simple design for now,
Right.
and I'm still using Statamic because it gives me that flexibility. But because in a way, it's also nice to be able to add things your own way.
Oh, for
Like for
sure.
example, I wanted to have that change log,
Mhm.
so I just did it in Statamic. It's really easy to do that as long as you don't spend a lot of time fiddling with the design and stuff. You can just create simple pages, and that all of that is it's really simple to do. But yeah, it takes a little more time
Mm. Oh, so
than
that's
just
the one I'm using, eager.app, for a help desk, like a knowledge base, and they have changelog and a pop-up thing for what's new. So
uh-huh.
again, it's a one-person indie maker project, and yes, I've started putting these things into that just because
Ah,
it's nice, and
cool.
it's
Well,
got like a help desk email thing, so you can get like people send you help requests. That basically keeps it all, and then you can link to your knowledge base from it. So it
ah,
seems pretty nice. Yeah.
cool. I started playing with what is it called? Crisp.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Crisp is another
CRISPR
solution kind of
intercom,
like
that
that.
kind of thing, right? So yeah, this is, I think, this is it was nice because it's an indie maker, and it
Uh,
was a whole lot cheaper than intercom,
I,
which is
yeah.
terrifyingly expensive.
Yeah, I was curious about Crisp because I know some people who are using it, and I created an account just to check it out, and it looks really good. But if I can help support an indie maker, I would rather go with something like that, as long as it's reasonably priced.
Exactly.
And yeah, send me the link if you
Mm,
if you don't mind.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
So, yeah, eager.app. But yes, I'll send you.
App. Cool.
And so, what are you using for analytics? I'm curious now. We should do a whole thing talking about what tools we have in our back pocket.
Oh yeah, that would be a cool episode. So actually, for analytics, I haven't done anything yet. I don't want to use Google
No,
Analytics. Are those the type of analytics you're
that's
referring
what I was
to?
curious about. Yes, yes. So
Yeah, in the past, I've used Google Analytics, but I'm trying to stay away from as much as I can from Google stuff. So my plan is to use Fathom
okay.
Analytics at
Mhm.
some point, but I haven't done that yet.
So I'm using Plausible, which again, similar
Ooh.
idea to Fathom. It's two guys, I think, in the UK. I think I've mentioned it before because it's written in Elixir as well.
Ah,
So it's actually that they open sourced the app, and so it's an interesting. It's open source. You can, if you want to host it yourself, you can. Do you want to host your own analytics service? No. So
okay.
you pay them. It's not expensive, and it's just really good. And so they seem to be doing really well. And yeah,
Cool.
it's super simple, but it does everything I need it to. So I like it. It's good.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's a great idea. We should do an episode with just
Yeah.
that,
What we
talking
use
about
and why
all.
we like it, and what we don't like
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, once we've established some of these tools a little better, because some of these we're still playing around and trying to
Right.
figure out which one to use, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, anything else we want to talk about?
I think that's good.
We should wrap it up here. All right, Alan, I'll let you go then. Have a great rest of your day. You're just getting started,
I
and
am.
mine is ending.
And enjoy your evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, man.
Take care.